Okay, everybody, I'm back with part 2, as promised, of the chassis demo, and I wanted to go over just a few more things before we get into the chassis demo concerning the hilts first. So I strongly believe that the future of fully removable chassis building is going to go in the direction eventually where people will no longer have to mail sabersmiths their hilts. I mean, now with the introduction of widespread 3D printers, acrylic cutters, all these various tools, everything is down to such a precision, minute measuring type of design that technically one of my other personal goals with this, I didn't go over this in the first video, so I want to do this now, but one of my personal goals with this build was to create a fully removable chassis that I could technically package up, put in the mail to someone else who owns this exact hilt, and with just a few extremely minor modifications like, the transistor, the transistor greeblies and the washers, you already have to modify the clamp anyways by opening up the holes so that the transistors will go in if you buy this hilt. So really, technically that is one of the only things you'd have to do to make this chassis work with your Roman props hilt. So yeah, I just want to put it out there that I truly believe and feel that in the future, eventually sabersmiths will be designing chassis for saber hilts that they'll just stick in the mail and mail to the customer, and the customer will not have to mail, us the hilts anymore, because we'll get this down as a fully removable chassis, and it'll just be kind of a separate thing that works on its own. So with that said, that's my prediction for the future. We'll see if it sticks. But speaking of the transistors, I just wanted to show that I know in some of the archive photos it goes back and forth between having the washer on or off on the left transistor. So what I've done here, since this is the turn kill key, you can display it with the washer on, but the tolerances are so tight on the turn kill key that you won't be able to activate the saber if in display mode you're using the washer with it. So if you pull the turn kill key, you can take the washer off and just put the turn kill key back in and display it the other way. So there's one of the many options on this hilt I wanted to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is Master Jeff supplied me with a steel blade plug. And so one of the things about the steel blade plugs, when you put an LED module in here, especially with a thick copper heatsink on it, is this will not go flush if either one of the LED heatsinks were installed in here. It would stick out about 1/4 of an inch. But the nice thing about being able to remove the LED modules, even with the chassis installed in the hilt, is you can make it go flush. And so, there it is. It's flush. The LED heatsink module is not in there. So for display purposes, there you go. Now, another thing that Master Jeff requested in this build is that he wanted a place to hide the blade retention key somewhere on the hilt where it didn't get lost, or if he takes it somewhere with him, he always has it with him. And so he sent me a photo of a design where they had actually made a hole in the back of the internal chassis where the key slid into the back and was secure in this section on another build. And I really like that idea. I thought that was cool, but because there's 3 cards stacked in here and there's no room to put a blade retention key, slide it in there anywhere, I didn't want to risk, putting metal in there, and who knows what would happen. So this was my workaround. So here you go, Master Jeff, another surprise. This is a non-interference system, and pretty much anybody can do this this modification. So if I unscrew this and you look in there, all that is a round neodymium magnet that sticks to the steel cap on the back of the sink knob. And there's no glue or anything on this. It's just you put the neodymium magnet, it automatically sticks to the steel. And let me set this down. And here is your blade retention key. You just go in there and you grab it with your finger. Well, that little magnet's got it now. All right, we just pop it out like this. There it is. So you just pop it out, and here's your blade retention key. There we go. And it's a 440. So then to put it back, just drop it on there, and pop it into the back of your sync knob, and off you go. All right, so I wanted to show off that modification. Let me screw this back on, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the heatsink module that Roman props. I know I keep saying Romans. It's just so easy to say it that way because it technically is Roman's props, but it is Roman props with no S. Just want to be clear about that. I also want to be clear about I completely understand the reason that Roman props and why Master Roman went with a steel heatsink module on this. I mean, if you unscrew this, if you want this to be dual worthy at all, if you want this to be dual worthy at all, you're gonna want to use a steel connection system in here. And so this is, you know, when I had it out before and I show the swapping of the LED modules back and forth, it's just a thin piece of metal holding this emitter onto the hilt itself. And of course it has to be steel, because if you put a 3-foot blade in here, practically 3 feet, and you're banging it around, you gotta have a steel a threaded connection between these two to have it be dual worthy. Now if you're using it just for display, I totally get where if you want your LEDs all the way up to 100% brightness and it gets all nice and hot in here, you're going to want to use an aluminum and especially a copper heatsink for the best heat transition. So I wanted to say that. I didn't want anyone to think that I'm dogging Master Roman's design on this at all, because it's a genius design with the steel heatsink module holder in there that threads into the rest of the hilt. You've got to have it for it to be dual worthy. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. And so let's go ahead and move on to a couple more things that I didn't really address on the chassis itself. So I had some questions already about what kind of battery was in here, because it's such a small build. This ended up being, I tried everything in my power to make it an 18650. And the battery with an 18650 literally goes from this line all the way up to about here. And so the problem with that, I tried everything over and over again. Problem with that is that this is a female jack, and so it goes in about, you know, yay far, and then you've got your recharge port right here and all these wires just below the speaker. So with the 18650, when I would try to unscrew the two halves, because this chassis does have a serviceable battery compartment, if you grab it here and here, this half and this half, right here where this seam is, this will unscrew. And what I've done is shave the threads down so that it's exactly one turn before it separates, so that it doesn't twist the wires. So, you know, whatever, 4 or 5 years from now, however long this battery lasts, when you need another one, you have to put another 18500 in here, because I needed space for the wires to be bundled up in here when you do twist it up. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't like twisting wires. That's kind of my whole thing. So I'm going to leave it alone. But in a few years from now, when you need another battery, you can separate these two halves right here on the chassis. And I left 2 really nice large solder points for the positive and negative for you just to swap out to another battery. Easy peasy. So yeah, that covers the battery compartment side of it. I've already had some other questions on what kind of speaker went in this. And if it's a non-removable chassis, not like this one, I know people are using the 28 millimeters because you have this big cage to work in if you're not going to slide the chassis out. But because we decided to make this a removable chassis, I went with the 23 millimeter square Railmaster, and it had to be dremeled down to a circle. And that was literally the only way that I could get any decent gauge wire around the speaker and up out here to the card. So I personally think it's just as loud. And so yeah, I'm real happy with the way it came out with the 23 millimeter Railmaster. What a cool little speaker. So yeah, thanks to Railmaster if they ever watch this for that. So I think that just about covers it. Let's go ahead and fire it up in demo mode. It's gonna roll through all the fonts on here. It's sort of like a random sequence thing where it'll roll the fonts in order, but all of the sound effects and, you know, your clashes and your blaster blocks and stuff are sort of like a random thing. But the fonts go in order, and so sometimes you'll hear a font maybe 2 or 3 times in a row. You know, just because the system, like the script that's written for it, obviously it's just like kind of a random thing. So this is my favorite feature on this saber. So way to go, Scott. That's right. So let's kill the lights, and here we go. We'll fire it up with our tweezers and demo mode. Alright. I'm just gonna let the saber talk.
Ben Kenobi? Boy, am I glad to see you. Ben Kenobi? Boy, am I glad to see you. Obi Wan since all before you were born. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
presence I've not felt since. Presence I've not felt since.
Eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
Will be with you, always.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
All right, and so that's gonna do it for all of the fonts. Just heard them all from beginning to end. The last thing that I want to show real quick, now that I've got the emergency kill key in, is, let's go ahead and unplug the LED module. And here is the USB charge port, and I just wanted Master Jeff to know, or anybody else. I'm gonna plug this in and show, it comes with a status light. So let me go ahead and plug this in off camera because I need to see it up close. And when you plug it in, you're going to get a status light like this while it's charging. And so it's going to be like kind of an amber orange color while it's charging, and then it'll turn to a bright blue once it's charged all the way up. So yeah, that was pretty much one of the last things I wanted to mention on this. And so the other thing, Master Jeff, is on the audio section on this, there's a separate track player, and so I've loaded the entire A New Hope soundtrack. I think it's about 2 hours long on the SD card, so you can just kick back and listen to the A New Hope soundtrack in its entirety. So that pretty much covers it, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in again, and you guys take care, and may the Force be with you.